Okay, Norma, I'm so excited about you. I think you are an incredible inspiration. I have read your book cover to cover. I'm reading it multiple times. If you were to look in my phone right now, you would find pictures of pull quotes from your book. So, for everybody listening to this, I truly, sincerely, highly recommend Norma's book called I Am Invincible. She's here today. She's talking. Well, I'm hoping she's going to talk to us about this. I would love to talk to her about being a fashion designer, being a pioneer in her field and her industry, and then as it relates to her book, which she calls a handbook. I have read Everybody's from Fashion's handbook, just to be clear, and it's all like, here's what you need in your closet, and eat less and exercise more and be perfect. And what I love about your book, Norma, is that I think you are so embracing of a whole person. And maybe that's, you describe your mom as eccentric and you describe your mother as timeless and your timelessness. So tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing and why you wrote this handbook and how you think about looking back on a fantastic and wild life and career. Like, give us the Norma Kamali picture.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'm so happy you are reading the book and taking screenshots. That's a good one. But I see you have acid green stickies also on the book, and a lot of people are showing me the book with a whole bunch of acid green stickies, and that really pleases me because I put so much of my heart and soul into this. My one thing that's really important for everyone to try to figure out is what their purpose is in this lifetime. And someone gave me great advice to make sure I understood what my purpose was so that I focus my energy in that direction and I don't have it sort of jumping all over the place. And I realized that my ultimate purpose is for a creative life, which I am achieving, but a creative life based on serving women. And I learned that early on. And as I understood purpose a bit better, I really look at what I'm doing now as more focused, more directed towards making that service very tangible. So a handbook is a great way for me to share my years of experience. And so I'm going on my 54th year of being a fashion designer. Can you imagine? Who said that? 54 years. And at 75, I feel that this is really important for me to talk about because I also believe strongly in aging with power. So for my career, I share a lot about my experiences as an entrepreneur, as a designer, starting in the 60s when we are just coming out of Mad Men time, and you know how women were treated then and what women accepted because that's the way it was, and we just understood that that was what would have to happen, to each decade where my life experience was changing and growing. And so as you navigate through the 20s, when I was turning 20, my mother told me it was all downhill from here. And I literally cried my eyes out because I thought, I don't want to get old like she is.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually, and I know lots of girls, I'm around a lot of young people, think the same thing. They think about aging at 20. And so between 20 and 30, there are a series of first time experiences as an adult, and we embarrass ourselves. We're very vulnerable, we're very naive, even though we think we know everything. We get hurt, and some of that hurt during that period is part of how we develop and how we learn. And so the 20s are, I would never want to relive them, quite frankly, and I'm sure you wouldn't want to either.
No,
right?
I'm good.
We did that. We let guys let them totally take advantage of us because we wanted to be loved, and if we're loved, we feel better about ourselves. And then when you hit 30, you're tearful if you haven't found the guy that you're supposed to be with and have children, and you feel like life is passing you by. So 30 is so traumatic in so many ways. I was going through a divorce at the time, and having that same feeling in reverse. And then 30 to 40, you're faking it till you make it, right? You kind of like, you gotta prove yourself. You want to take jobs that you really want to do, so you don't really know what you're doing, but you're surprised when you realize how good you are at certain things, and also surprised at how bad you are at certain things. But that's important, and the 30s are really, really key and critical. But you've also aged yourself out of the dating market in the classical sense of it. So that's disarming too. Then 40 is like, okay, now the brand you created of you monetize. Now's the time to monetize it. Now's the time. This is who you are. This is what you deserve. And that works. And then you're also at that perimenopause, menopause, going into the biggest transition of your life, which is 50, an extraordinary transition. It's not easy, but I have to tell you, the way you go through 50 defines the rest of your life. And everything I did at 50 really laid the groundwork for me today, which is 25 years later. These numbers are incredible, but I say them to give everybody perspective about the importance of really understanding each decade. So I do break that out in the book, and I also give tools and information about diet and sleep and exercise in each of those decades, and how important it is to use them as tools for aging with power, so that you look good, you feel good because you're healthy, not because you got 50 pounds of Botox, or some other fake thing, that that it's you, and that you feel good in your body, not every day, but as
on the whole.
Yeah. And so I am invincible. I am not saying I am invincible. If you read the entire cover, you'll realize I am invincible is an aspiration. It's, I want more invincible days, because the days any of us feel invincible, women kill it when they're on an invincible day, when the hair, everything fits right. We feel right. Our minds are sharp. We can get it done. And so we don't always have them every day, but the more we have, the more we're able to reach our potential and do good and really show the power of a woman.
I love that. I think you seem to me very, very much as a woman who, who's always been very mission driven. There's a chapter in the book where you talk about OMO, on my own, and I think this was after your divorce, or in the process of the divorce. And what I love about I Am Invincible is I agree with you. I think if more people can feel that they are living with power and they are on a path to greatness, whatever that greatness may be, the happier they are, the healthier they are, the more they glow from the inside. And, it's kind of funny. We're in this crazy time, which you also acknowledge in the book. And, we have this joke at Barstool Sports about like, who's invincible from COVID? And I'm like, I'm invincible from COVID. And I'm obviously not invincible from COVID, but I feel invincible because I feel healthy. And you talk about, your immune system. And, I think what you provide is a really approachable way of everything adds to one another, which I think is interesting about you being a fashion designer is when you're a fashion designer, you obviously have a point of view, you have an aesthetic, and you have a great sense of proportion and line. And to me, what I really took away from your book is it's all these things together. It's a great pair of shoes. It's a good hair day. It's a great night's sleep. It's having a mission when you wake up in the morning. So tell me a little bit, like, did you always feel like you were on a path towards something or towards invincibility? Were you always mission driven? Like, talk a little bit about you've had an extraordinary career. How did you achieve that, and an extraordinary life?
Well, being mission driven is sort of a lesson that I've learned to be more effective about reaching goals. So the thing about the fashion industry, and for example, when I went on my own, I was, 29 when I was divorced, and when I finally left because my husband and I were 19. We were like, who are we? He was the reason, gorgeous, great dancer. I mean, that enough is a reason to get married.
At 19, 100%. I'm not sure what else you would be looking for.
Right. So clearly, by the end of our 20s, we're two completely different people. And it's a time when men controlled everything. And he controlled the money. And however, he was enjoying spending the money on women and going out. And so I was okay with it because I found my passion, and I was making and designing clothes, and I was very happy with it. And, I really, to be honest, other than being humiliated by it, I really didn't give it a damn.
Yeah, you're like, I've got my mission.
Right. So, but when the sales girl he was dating told me that she was now going to be the designer and that she had some ideas for me to do, I thought, I think this is the time to leave. However, I only had $98. And so you feel vulnerable, you have no money, I don't know how to run a business. I believe men know about money and I don't, but I suspected maybe they don't know that much more. And so I had to make a leap for my own soul, and not because I had a vision about being on my own. I was on survival mode. And very often those big decisions that we make in our lives, like walking away, hard one, right? Walking away, what makes you walk away has to be so painful and so uncomfortable that you can't tolerate what's happening. That's where those big changes in your life take place. Had I not walked away, where would I be, quite frankly? And so it was devastating and really hard. And that's when you learn how do I make this work? I never spoke a word. I was very quiet and shy. And I realized that the first person I told about what had happened said, I'm going to help you. I'm going to get you sewing machines. And before I knew it, I had people who were supporting me and helping me. And I thought, oh my God, this is what a lesson. If people don't know what you need and you can't communicate, you're not going to get anywhere. And so I learned to develop my communication skills. And I had no idea of how to do that. So I copied a friend who really was a great communicator. And I copied her until her whole style, until I felt like I'd now assimilated it and had it to be me.
To be your own.
Yeah.
I also love how one of the things you say in the book is that to change, you have to surrender who you are in a hope for who you will become. Like, what is your advice to women and people as they think about making all sorts of types of changes, career changes, personal changes, health changes. How do you think about the surrendering and the, there's something scary about you might not become what you want to become. So how do you think about that?
Well, I think that's the best question because in order to make any change, that obviously the change has to start with you. No matter what it is you want to change, the change has to start with you. And for me, and that has to do with change in the kind of people you attract, the friends you attract, the relationships you attract, the soulmate you attract, the jobs you get offered, all have to do with how you feel about yourself and how you project how you feel about yourself. And, I talk about self-love, and obviously not in a narcissistic way, but in a way that says, I respect myself, therefore the choices I'm going to make are going to be good for me. And when you do that, it's like you send out a signal. It's like a scent. You send out this signal, and the right people, the people you deserve, start getting attracted to you. When you hate yourself and there's self-loathing, well, I don't know about you, but I attracted some of the dregs of society in my not feeling that good about myself period of my life. And I think we all do at some point. And when they come at you, the dregs, they really come at you because they know this I can make
She's vulnerable.
I can take her down and own her or whatever. And you know what? Guys have the same thing. Guys really have the same thing. If they project positivity and self-love, not emphasis, not on narcissism, we're more attracted to them. But they also can attract women that are not going to be so nice to them either.
Yep.
So we know both ways. So self-love is the key. And when you have that and you have a clear picture with confidence now about how you feel, how your energy, your health, your ability to take on challenges, then you go for the big stuff. You go for the big dreams. You don't go for the little mediocre dreams. You reach up, and you maybe you don't reach it, but you find something even better than what you thought you were going to get. So it's really so much based on self-love.
That's great. Talk a little bit about being timeless. Norma, you mentioned at the beginning of this, you've been in the fashion business for 54 years. Like, you go on I only buy clothes through e-commerce, but you go on any fabulous e-commerce site and you find your designs. How have you thought about being timeless in your work, and what is timeless about your energy and your person and your worldview?
One of the things that you learn being around for a long period of time is what stays and is relevant over a period of time, and what leaves and comes back and leaves and comes back, and what never comes back. And obviously the tricky, trendy stuff, it's short-lived, and then it, unfortunately is in a plastic garbage bag that doesn't get recycled, right? The other is that timeless in everything I've learned I look at healthy lifestyle, and one of the judgments of choices I make for ingredients are timeless ingredients that are healthy, like olive oil and really good sea salt, and ingredients in skincare like kohl and these sea products, and things that really hold up over a period of time are going to be the safest. You can be loyal to them for a long period of time because they'll be good for you. So timeless is really in everything. And I think in your home, in your life, in the choices of clothing that you make, it's so great to have pieces as you evolve and understand who you are and what you want to project. Then you can develop clothing that represents who you are, and it's all your favorite pieces that you can wear for years. And as you get a new piece, you mix it in. So you don't buy a whole lot of junk. I mean, people buy too much.
That's
We
ridiculous.
buy
Yeah.
buy way too much instead of timeless, great pieces. And timeless doesn't mean boring at all. That you can have this beautiful vintage embroidered jacket that you have forever because it's timeless. It's just what it is. So for me, one of the things I did when I was and in the early 70s, I decided that I wanted to do some clothing that would be vintage of the future, because prior to that, I was Miss Vintage. I was wearing chiffon gowns, 12 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yep.
I was like velvet gowns to Central Park. I mean, I was Miss Vintage Queen for many years. And I thought, I relate so much to the clothing from the 30s, like mid to late 30s and early 40s. I love everything about it. I want to, how can I create vintage of the future? So I developed some styles that are literally still being sold on the websites that you just referred to and mine. And nobody knows that. I did a dress called the All-in-One that you can wear a million different ways. Be pregnant in it, not pregnant. You could wear it one shoulder strapless a million ways. And that was one of the dresses. That was one of the pieces. So I think the idea of timeless has always been very exciting for me. If you look at the sleeping bag coat, I made the sleeping bag coat in 1973. I've sold it every single year since then. And there are 3 times where the sleeping bag coat was stellar. One, the first time was Studio 54. The doorman wore it. So everybody thought if they wore a sleeping bag coat, they could get in. Not really, but I certainly was
appreciated that line of thinking.
Don't buy this. Right. So we sold a lot then, to men and women, obviously. And then 9/11 was another time. As a New Yorker, I was devastated, didn't even open the building or the company. But in the second week, I decided to check the answering machine and remember answering machines and see what messages. And it was sleeping bag coat, sleeping bag coat, sleeping bag coat, which was much earlier, and it was hot and muggy. So I brought my team back. I got 2 factories to open, and we made sleeping bag coats like crazy because people were stranded in hotel lobbies and, staying with friends and didn't have beds. And so and now through COVID, especially supporting our restaurants and eating outside, and there were so many people that wanted, and I decided I'm just going to reduce the price dramatically and give everybody the opportunity to support and be warm and comfy and have something that they're going to be able to use for the next 30 years if they want to. So timeless is critical, and having a timeless attitude about your health and how you feel and how you sort of behave towards the goodwill for yourself is really as important. And timeless also in aging is important. So I look, I speak to a lot of scientists who are experts on aging and doctors. And one of them specifically was telling me that 120 is when the cells have their last turnover, right? So that's end here. And so I said, oh, wait a minute. I think I want to put in my head that I'm going to live to 120.
Yeah, let's go.
even though I know that my genetic disposition might change that, but I don't care. I'm not gonna pay attention to that.
We're going for 120.
Right. But the truth is, if you're thinking that way, the decisions you make so that you can achieve that are very, very real. So I use that as a barometer about what I'm doing in my life, decisions about how I'm treating myself, even karmically, how I'm behaving with other people, just so that there's good karma and you're thinking in a good way. And I love that I did that because I'm thinking in the long game. I'm not thinking as a 75-year-old. I'm thinking as someone who's thinking they can live to 120. So I have so many plans for the future, just for this year. So I think the long game and timeless is all kind of fit in the same package.
Norma, you are awesome. Thank you for doing this. I think you're incredibly inspiring. Everyone can find your books wherever people buy books. You can buy a sleeping bag coat. You can go out and support a local restaurant. And I think there's just so much to be learned from you. So just thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you very much. And you look great.
Thank you. You look great.
Thank you.
I'll send you a picture. We'll
Right.
talk to you later. Thank you, Norma.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Okay, you too. And we obviously have a collection of people here who are in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s. And so I wanted to have you guys come on and just talk about that.
I love that.
So we have Kayce Smith. So Kayce is a Barstool talent and personality. Hi, Kayce.
Hi.
One of our brightest stars. We have
Oh,
Ann
thank you.
McCarthy, who herself is a badass. You may know her as the producer of Twisted History. She actually was the CEO of a billion-dollar company, comes from the stock market and Wall Street, is referred to by large as his bride, or Queen Anne, or Saint Anne, I guess, actually Saint Anne.
And Queen too, that works.
I like that. But she's a woman who's very loved and very powerful. So welcome, Anne.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
And then we've got Frankie, Rachel, and Jourdyn bringing up the 20s segment of this podcast. So all producers and partners of the Token brand. So I thought that we could answer a couple questions and be representative of different decades. Does that work for you guys?
Perfect.
All right. So we're going to start with the 20-somethings. So
Yeah, you guys have to go first. All of their
they're
eyes
like,
lit up
shit,
real
no.
quick. Like, shit,
So
we have to
just-
go first.
Yeah, and just for
I was not ready for that.
Want to come sit here?
I took notes. I'm ready.
That's so
and
funny.
also just for anyone, which is Anne's here. She's got notes on her phone. She's got notes in the notebook. She's super prepared. Frankie's like, what are we doing? Okay. All right. So the first question.
No.
Oh, here. Do you want to sit with me, Anne? You can sit. You can share with me.
No, you guys, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. So the first is, what are 3 words? Let's start with you, Jourdyn. What are 3 words that define your age/decade?
Okay, I said dramatic, temporary, and enlightening.
Okay. And
Oh.
you are how old?
26.
26. Okay. What would you say for the 30s?
I would say complicated, trying to figure out where we're supposed to be, and also dramatic. And I'm 32.
Okay. And what would you say?
So for me, I looked at back then, and I came up with hairspray, malls, and shoulder pads.
That was your 20s?
That was. I'd say like the 80s. Like I went back to the decades. Like I was trying
Oh,
to think
okay,
of what
got it.
defined everybody.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know if you wanted me personally or if you wanted like what defined that.
Either or both.
Okay. So those were mine because they really did form the way people behaved because the way you looked and where you went and how where you were able to say you went and hung out, that was very, very indicative of the kind of person you were.
Yeah.
It was
I
all
love
about
that.
appearances then.
All
The
right.
shoulder pads. The pictures of my mom back
wow.
in the day with the shoulder
I
pads
love
are
shoulder
just,
pads. Shoulder pads are coming back.
They should for COVID.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
keep
right.
your 6
Right?
feet
Yeah,
apart.
yeah, social distance. Okay, so then the next, so Frankie and Rach, do you have different words to describe your 20s? Actually, sorry,
I would have said probably hopeful. I think the 20-year-olds or 20-somethings are hopeful for things to change and for the future, but also soft. If I'm being honest.
Yeah, I was gonna say soft, tired, and like figuring it out.
What's tired mean though?
Like
You all should not be tired.
I didn't say I was tired.
I feel like I'm tired all the time. Like I fall asleep and I'm like thinking about like what we should do tomorrow, and like waking up like how can we like do something else. So like
that's because you're motivated.
But it's tired. Like, it's tired.
Okay.
So it's kind of both.
Mental exhaustion, I think, is a lot harder than physical exhaustion.
Absolutely.
I
Because
think that 20-somethings now are more mentally tired than when we were in our 20s.
Definitely.
That's what I mean.
Definitely.
And they're able to talk about it. I mean, even in my early 30s, I think we're able to talk about it more so than people who are older generations. Because if you talked about being mentally tired or mental health, you were seen as weak.
People
Now
would be like,
it's
"Shut
not.
the fuck up."
Yeah, now it's not. Now it's more open, and you're destigmatizing the fact of like my brain kind of hurts today. And I think people in their 20s are really embracing that.
I had lunch today with Joanne, so my old boss / mentor and friend, and she's in her 50s, so she's probably in her mid 50s at this point. And we were talking about how women in their 20s and 30s actually have it more figured out. Like, you all are learning things that we're just learning now, which is when we were in our 20s or 30s, it was all about work. It was like just all about career. Whereas she has daughters in their 20s, and they have a way bigger sense of like balance and perspective, and you don't want to work all the time. And I thought that was kind of interesting, which is like kind of what Joanne and I are coming to, you know, she in her 50s and me in my 40s, which is kind of interesting.
I feel like I grew up watching my mom have such a high-powered career, and she didn't get married till she was in her 30s, and then she had my younger sister 3 years later, and then she quit her job. So I grew up thinking you could only have one or the other. It was like, oh, well, if you have kids, you can't have a high-powered career, but if you want a high-powered career, you can't have kids. And as I've gotten older, especially in my late 20s, early 30s, I'm looking at people like you, and you like, you can have both. Like, you can, but I grew up thinking you couldn't because my mom immediately quit, because in that time, it was like, you do need to be a stay-at-home mom. But now that has evolved where I think people in their 20s and 30s are like, you can actually have both at an early age.
And I think it's different too, where the world is so much softer, and you all have like the emotions are so much more on the surface. Like, you know, I was laughing, David and I were like, Kayce was on a Clubhouse on Monday night with Bailey talking about mental health. When I was in my 30s, if you were depressed, you just like zipped it and buried it. You know what I mean? And now we're
I can
doing,
only
like,
imagine what Dave
Clubhouses.
said about that. Yeah, like, I'm just like, what the fuck are we doing here?
But it's generational. Like, there's something.
Did you guys even know how to define depression?
I mean,
in
you
the day?
just wouldn't. That's just how you work.
Like, pick up the rug, shove it.
Don't
on.
you think, Anne?
Well, it'll be interesting for you to ask that question to the woman you were talking about before, because she really laid it out, like her depressed state, to this woman who gave her a sewing machine.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how it came full circle,
Yeah.
right? So for me, it was different because I was raised by a single dad, and I was brought down to the trading floor very early, and I was surrounded by all these men. It was definitely male dominant where I was, down on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And the women that were down there were extremely sympathetic to other women. And if you came down there with an agenda to find a husband, you were identified real quickly, and everybody knew who. Like, we didn't have a problem with that. But we just knew which ones were, in for the quarter mile, and the ones that were in for top. Like, you knew which ones were there to make a difference and to have a career. And they were all so helpful and so supportive. So I think that there's something to be said for knowing where you can express yourself and wear your heart on your sleeve. So I like that girls are doing that younger. I think it's better for them, and I think a lot of that has to do with, like you were saying with your mom, like strong women teaching that and leading by example.
Yeah.
How do you think about like career and life in your 30s? Like, and is it different than your 20s?
Yeah, we talked about this the last time I was on the episode, because we had Laura Rutledge, who's my age, who was big time at ESPN, but also with the family. Like, in my 20s, it was like, I absolutely do not want to get married. I absolutely do not want to have kids. There's no room for that. I want to really just build my career. Now, even just 2 years into my 30s, I'm like, okay, I really like where my career is going. That's going to come first. But maybe down the line, there is a little bit more. And in my 20s, it was an absolute no way, no how. And in the last couple of years, it's been like things do evolve. Or if you'd have told me at even like 28, I'd be like, you're fucking crazy if you think I'm going to get married. But now it does feel like, okay, like when I'm 40, do I really just only want to be focused on my career? Maybe I do. but there's more room to think about that now.
And do you worry about it, or are you hopeful for it? Like, I
don't worry about it yet. And even at Barstool, you know, with all of our audience coming in and being like, why are you not married at 30? And I'm like, well, because I don't really want to be. I don't worry about it, but I am more hopeful now because I see people getting married later and later, but also living in New York City. Like, being 32 in New York City is completely different than being 32 in Texas. Like, if I was single in Texas right now, they'd be like, what happened to you? Something's wrong with you. How many men have you chased away? Whereas like now it's like, this is more normal, I think, in 2021 in New York City. So I'm hopeful, but I'm also not chasing it because that's not something that I've ever wanted. So I'm not going to force it right away. Just be like, I'm open to it. If I meet the right person, I meet the right person. But my career's always going to come first, just to let everyone know. There's no pressure. That's not going to change.
I used to feel some pressure that if you were to have a life outside of work or be married or have kids, or that meant you weren't serious about your career, which I don't know if that's still so much a stigma around women in the workplace. Like, did you feel like that in your business?
I don't know. Like, I didn't think I was ever going to, marriage for me was just not one of the things I had in my mind. Like, I was not getting married. I was not having kids. And then I met my husband and I was like, oh, I'm getting married. Kids, yeah, right. And then my oldest wasn't born until we got married when I was 25. And that was like, it just kind of happened within 10 months. And then we had kids when I was 30. I was 31 when I had my oldest. And, I think because I was in a very family-oriented company. Like, I worked for my dad. I worked with my cousins. Like, it was very family
was part of
it. Yeah.
it.
All of a sudden now I'm married, and it's like, well, when are you having kids? When are you having kids? So once I did, I didn't leave. I didn't leave work until my second was 2. So I continued to work for a long time. I didn't leave until I was 37. So. And I could have done it, but we sold our company. It was like the writing was on the wall.
Yeah, you're like,
stock exchange changed.
I'm going to do this right now.
But if I could have stayed in my job, if it was still there, I would have done it in a heartbeat. Yeah. Yeah, because it's like you were saying, oh, that's, my job comes first. You find a way to make like your kids, your husband, and your job all the same priority. And you make it work. You just do.
I feel like in your 20s, you don't realize this, and it's something I've learned too, and you guys will see this later on if you decide you don't want to have kids or get married. It's like you have to apologize one way or the other. That's a woman thing, not a man thing. And I know I've told Erika this before. It's like if you choose to have a career and not have a family, you have to apologize because you're not doing your womanly duty of procreating. If you choose to be a stay-at-home mom and take care of the kids, well, then you're not doing your duty by helping bring in the money. And if you do both, you have to apologize for not giving either one more time. So like Erika's the CEO of this massive company, also has a family. So somebody's going to say, well, you're not a good enough mom because you're working, or you're not giving all of your time to your company. So women really can't put themselves in any box where it makes everybody happy. In my 20s, I never really realized that doesn't fucking matter. Like, it's whatever you want to be in. And if somebody takes offense to that, that's their problem, not yours. They're projecting that.
That's a good segue. What other advice would you have given to yourself in your 20s?
First of all, that one,
but
first of all, that one, but also just like whatever's going on now, like in your career, is not the end all be all. Because when I was 25, I was on the sidelines of ESPN thinking like, this is the last thing I'm ever gonna do. Like, and I liked being there, but just never realizing that like you're so young, and I'm still so young at 32. But just like really attaching myself to every mistake I made, every single thing I did professionally. If I messed up, it ate me alive. Where then it was like, well, I hate ESPN now, like I love some of the people there, but like I would never go back. And just realizing how quickly things can evolve. It's just like, don't think that there's not a future just because you're ending in your 20s. Like your 30s, I'm actually way happier in my 30s than I was in my 20s. So advice is just to like know zoom out and realize there are a lot more things that are going to happen.
So you're telling me it gets better?
It gets better. It gets better.
It does. Yeah.
I just think that like there's such a, I think maybe it's just the career that I chose, to be honest with you, that it's totally like you have to work your ass off, and if you don't work your ass off, then you're not trying hard enough. And like I have never had a job where I didn't work on weekends and I didn't work nights. Like I don't know what a 9-to-5 is, so for people who are like my age and have like those luxuries in life, I'm like, well, how are you doing that? Like that seems pretty cool. Like that seems nice. Yeah, like when's that gonna like happen? Like I don't care. I love what I do. So like, but like I don't know. I guess I'm the whole like marriage thing for sure. Like that's totally like I have voiced it to my family multiple times. I have zero interest in having kids, and my mom was like, "Hey, like you say that now, but like once they're yours, like you'll change your mind." And I'm like, "No, that's just like not. on my radar at all.
And
But,
it
like,
doesn't
that's-
have to be, because things
yeah.
do change. And I think it does get better from a standpoint of, because like I'm the same way. I've never had a 9 to 5. I've always done something
Yeah.
in this industry. But what I have noticed is that like as long as I love it, it's worth it. So like,
100%.
I have to miss a wedding in the fall because I'm covering college football. That's fine, because I
Right.
love it. It's when people hate their jobs and also don't have that balance.
I think-
because I see that a lot with people in their 30s. Like they had to do it in their 20s because they had to make money,
Yeah.
but they never gave themselves to love their job.
I think that the biggest thing too is like I think everybody in this room is so fortunate to have found a passion in life. I think that when I look around and I see my friends who are like, you have the coolest job, you have all this stuff figured out, and I'm like, I'm fucking running around with my head cut off in reality. But like they're like, you have it so figured out, and I'm like, well, the reason that you think that is just because I have found a passion in life. You maybe haven't yet, but that passion happens to be integrated into work. And like, yeah, I might work my ass off and work, bajillion hours a week, but it's so intertwined into like what I love to do that like it's lucky to be that way kind of thing.
What advice would you give to someone in college right now?
To someone in college?
Not
well,
necessarily career, just like
yeah, I think that like the only reason maybe why I'm even sitting in this chair in the first place is because my sophomore year of college, I would like go out of my way to try different things and figure out what I didn't like. Like I kind of just wanted more beer money in college, so I went and like joined like the on-camera crew for
Preach
like the
that.
streaming.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You gotta have more beer money.
I gotta have beer money is really important. But that
Still.
was that
Still
was,
is, yeah.
still
That
doesn't change.
Still is.
It went to wine money for me, but I get it.
And always will be
The
that
beverage
way.
may change, the
Yeah.
fact does not.
Yeah.
But it was the fact that I was just like, screw it, I'm just gonna go and get this job on campus. I'm busy with lacrosse, I'm busy with school, I'm just gonna do this anyways just because I need more money. Happen to find a passion. But all those people who are like kind of feel stuck in life are the people who don't have that figured out yet.
Yeah.
So, and you can't ever figure that out without trying new things.
I think
Stepping
that's
outside
great
your comfort
advice.
zone.
What's your advice, Jourdyn?
It's similar. I said don't take yourself too seriously and pursue what you enjoy, and not even on a career front, but everything. Like in college, I think they teach you have to do everything a certain way, whether it's the classes that you have to take or what you have to do to get on your resume to get the internship. Like I was an awful student in the sense that I never studied, but I made the most out of all my relationships because that's what I enjoyed. So like instead of studying for the test, I'd much rather have like a meaningful conversation with the professor. And that's my little brother. He's 6 years younger than me and he's in college now. And I can hear him get stressed out about the things that I used to stress over. And it's like, you got to do what you want to do because we've all talked about it. We all work like crazy people, but it doesn't feel like work because we're pursuing what we enjoy. And I think if you can do that at a younger age and not sweat the things that are little and feel big in the moment, you're going to be so much more happier.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a shift when people our age start having kids. That's going to be the shift and the difference is that there's these kids, God, in like what, 10 years people have kids now, I guess, 25, 35, whatever. When those people have kids and those people go off to college, I think there's going to be a total shift of like how to pursue a career and how to make yourself happy in life. And it's not going to be this like, you have to do this, this, and this, get this job, get that internship, and then go there.
Yeah.
It's going to be totally different.
I think that's a big. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I think that's why like my age I feel like is complicated because we're kind of stuck in that middle
You're
where
in
like
the-
we're
you're
stuck in the
tweeners.
middle of like
Of
where
my-
of
yeah.
y'all's generation where and you're not that much older than me but it was like it is very strict one
You're, like,
way
work.
where
Yeah.
it's like then the younger generation they're just like everyone loves each other and
Yeah.
everyone's trying to
Yeah.
have that balance and I'm just like what am I supposed to be doing? Am I supposed to be balanced? Am I supposed to be
And
not?
to your point, you're not living up to one of their standards.
Yeah. So I mean, but I think that you're right though. When I think the people that are younger right now, when they start having kids, when you guys start having kids, it's going to be a shift in that, whether both good and bad, because that happens in every generation. I mean, your parents raised you guys in a different way than you are now. So I think that's what's important.
I think that there's, if I were to give any piece of advice to people in their 20s, I think whether it's work or kind of to the passion thing is it's okay to be passionate about what you're passionate about, that you don't have to be, you cannot find passion or you cannot prescribe passion. And I think that that's really important is like, I feel like one of my biggest regrets professionally in my 20s was I just was so afraid to go out on my own or take a risk or to not be on the path that I was supposed to be on. And I wish I didn't break free until my late 30s. You know what I mean? Like, I wish I had broken free sooner and been more experimental. I think that's true in who you love and what you do and what you wear and where you go to college. And like, if you can feel confident about your passion and be okay with the uncertainty of where it's going to take you, I think that's a great thing. And then also kind of, I would agree with Kayce, is that, you know, my observation of people here, women here in particular in their 20s, is everything seems very big and very right now and very much a crisis. Like, I think you are all in some
dramatic.
We're different kind of dramatic.
Yeah, the drama isn't external. That's actually interesting. The drama you all have is not external. It's in your brain. And that's hard because you're always battling your insecurities and your needs and the perceptions. And I think that that's hard. And what advice would you give to someone in their 20s?
It's actually kind of speaks to what Kayce and Frankie both said, because mine is be confident, but still be kind to yourself. You know, you don't have to, I think people are so willing, they want to try things like you said, but they're like, oh, well, I shouldn't because I'm this. Or if someone criticizes you, like I think you spoke about that in a couple episodes ago, about taking criticism. Like I think people, women in particular, they get criticized and their confidence level goes, like it goes right down. And I think you have to take it and still be kind to yourself. Like, well, okay, that's going to help me better do this better or do that better. I think people who have confidence shouldn't they should be kinder to themselves. Like they should compliment themselves as well, because you have to own everything you do, and you have to see yourself in a light of like, well, I did this and this didn't work for me, or I did this and that worked for me. So you have to be confident and you have to be kind about it. Like if it is bad or you do make a mistake, it's good to have those. It's good to do that. And I think, you shouldn't feel the need to apologize for making a mistake, because for years men went to work, and if they fucked up, someone was like, oh, you fucked up. And the next day they went back to work because they had to go to work. And, I think that they just kind of put it out of their heads, and I think more women need to do that. Like, just get out of your own head. Get out of your own head, because tomorrow's another day, and you know what? You're not going to make a mistake. You're going to do something right. So if you're going to feel good about it, and you're going to compliment yourself, you should do that on both sides, whether it's something positive or something negative. See it in a way, but for what it is, but be kind about it. And I don't think people are kind enough to themselves.
Yeah.
No.
Especially
in your 20s.
Exactly.
Oh, I don't think it ends.
Oh, it does. It definitely doesn't end. It definitely doesn't end. I will say, but I mean, I'm still not
extremely
kind to
harsh
myself,
to
but I
myself.
feel like when you get it more established, and obviously you can speak to this way more than I can, but when you get a little bit more established in your job, you can at least see that, and you can be like, okay, look, like I am where
Not
I am.
entirely a fuck up.
Yeah, like I'm not like just floating around trying to figure it out. But I mean, then on a grander scale, like when you do quote fuck up, which you don't do, but then when people think that you are fucking up, it is a much grander scale. So you're a lot harder on yourself than somebody who's not as established. So it does go back and forth. But I mean, I feel like in your 20s, if you just like, you're like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? You don't forgive yourself for like, you don't have to know what you're doing in your 20s. Yeah. You don't have to know what you're doing for the rest of your life.
Yep.
You don't have to know who you're going to marry. I think a lot of girls and women think like the first serious relationship they get in, like that's the man I have to marry because that's what I'm supposed to do. Like you don't have to do that.
The dancer.
Like the dancer. Everybody's got a dancer.
Yes, but women are just hard on themselves. Like just in general, we don't need to be from like the time we're born to the time we die. We're just much harder on ourselves than men are.
So you need to find something, like if when the time is right, you're going to find somebody that makes you want to be a better version of yourself, that allows you to help them be a better version of themselves without snapping at you. Like I think it just happens organically. I think when you try too hard, like with anything, it's ultimately going to set you up to fail. So you have to just, hope for the best, prepare for the worst type thing. Like you just have to really, I think same thing with the relationships. When it happens, it just does. Hopefully you recognize it when it does.
So the sooner you find your fuck it button, the better off you are.
Well, 100%.
The fuck it button is important.
Yes.
Huge. Yes.
It's very hard to find, I think.
Have you found it?
There are moments when I have it for sure. Do I have it all the time? No.
I think it's fluid.
I
think it depends on the situation. It depends on like what hits you that day.
Yeah.
Because I definitely have it in some spots. I didn't have it even a year ago, but then in some spots I'm like, am I ever gonna have a fuck it button here? So I mean, you deal with stuff on a daily basis of people coming after you. Like some days you feel like you have it, some days you don't.
Yeah, it's true.
Or who you fucked up. Like if it depends on who you did it
Correct.
with. Like if I do it with this, I say something that completely embarrasses, my husband, and he's like, "What did you say?" And I'm like, Or if it's like, with somebody on, somewhere that doesn't know me, it depends. Like it's
How do you guys think about? I think one of the things that changes over decades or changes over time with women is just the sense of, not just women actually, with people, is just responsibility. So. I think women our age and in my age look at 20-something-year-old problems and we think they're indulgent. Like the things you all worry about, we think are indulgent, because when you get to your 40s, you're worried about your parents, you're worried about your health, you're worried about your marriage, you're worried about your career, you're worried about your lack of career. On and on and on. Like the world of your responsibility changes so dramatic. The sphere of your responsibility. Now that said, when you've got $5 to your name and you don't know how to pay rent, that may be more acute. You know what I mean? Like I can remember being in my 20s and I was in Brookline, Massachusetts, and I literally had $5 in my bank account and I couldn't get home one night. So it's like that's an equally large responsibility. So how do you guys think about that?
I'll let the younger ones go first, because I feel like I feel the same way in my 30s when I look at stuff that you deal with. I'm like, I don't know how I would ever deal with that. So let the 20-somethings go first.
I think it's all relevant though. Like I think it's relative to where you are. Like you not having $5 probably felt like your world was gonna end.
100%. I didn't know how it was going to
end. I think like that's totally fair. Like you look at us and think like, oh, they don't have it bad. Like all this stuff, and we're like, well,
we have it so bad.
Yeah, we're like, well, it is bad. Like you're not feeling how I feel right now. So I think it's like I was in school and I was halfway through school and I realized I hated my major. So it was like, my world is falling apart. Like, what do? Do I go to school for 4 more years and change it and all this stuff? And I think you just have to be able to go with the flow. 2 years ago, I was a teacher and now I'm at Barstool Sports. So it's I think you just have to be in your moment and be okay with that.
Yeah. What do you think, Jourdyn?
I have some stuff written down. First of all, I've noted I'm very dramatic throughout this entire episode. I think we all can say we're dramatic, but everything feels better after a good night of sleep. I've totally had the moments of not being able to pay my rent, or when I was moving apartments, I didn't want to pay for the movers because I had $0. So I was carrying my TV. You gotta take life day by day and get a good night of sleep, because you always feel better in the morning after sleep. And people are probably rolling their eyes, but
I agree with that.
Just slowing down. Totally. I mean, that's what it is. Slowing down.
And then shout out to my boss, Kelly Martin, because I had to write this one down. She gave me the advice, don't complain about something if you're not willing to change it.
I love that.
Very good. What other wisdom you got to drop on us, Jourdyn?
Put that on a t-shirt.
On every word here.
Well, it's funny. I take notes all the time, because with MacBooks, Apple in general, you can write on your laptop, it transfers to your phone, vice versa.
Amazing.
I have an entire tips from Kelly tab, so I was going through it today.
Okay. Wow.
But then I also had a tips from Erika, and it was, don't be the first one to grab food. That's all I have written down for you.
Great tip, though.
And I don't know.
That's what you've taken away from us.
It says,
That's so funny.
Things I learned from Erika. This was February 7th, 2020. Be the second person to grab food. I don't know when you said it. I don't know what the context was.
I don't know either. That's funny.
That's very funny.
What else has Kelly Martin taught you? A woman in her 30s, right? Kelly's in her 30s.
Yeah, Kelly's in her 30s. Okay. An evening bath. She's going to kill me. An evening bath burns 500 calories.
Okay.
Really?
That goes with the
Is
good
that true?
sleep. In Kelly's life, it is.
Okay.
And I'm gonna,
We're taking it.
say yes. Let's see.
If she believes it works,
she's
right?
drinking wine in the bath.
So
And
funny.
Yeah.
That is
Placebo
totally
effect?
Okay, this one's a little more explicit. If she's a bitch, she's a bitch. It doesn't matter the age.
That's right.
Okay.
That's true.
That's right.
That is true.
I'm trying to see. Some of them are a little more, personal, don't speak with an uptick. I've been working on that one for quite a while. Don't smile so often, which I actually think is good advice, because I'm such a people pleaser. and a little bit of a mush, as you've called me before, Erika. So sometimes I gotta put on my mean face. And let's see.
And then someone will tell you that you need to smile more. That's
the
way it goes.
They're like, be softer, Jourdyn.
Yeah.
Life isn't so bad, right? You'll get one of those.
Oh, yeah. Like, are you sure it's that bad? It's okay.
Watch
I had to
out,
tell
buddy,
I had
not
to tell
today.
HR Stephanie yesterday that I was working on the kinder, gentler Erika, and I did a great job of it yesterday.
Oh, good.
And then I was like, I'm exhausted.
I think it goes back to just like giving grace. Like, as you know, you take just people in general, but especially women at different ages. Like, I don't understand like the plights of what you go through because I haven't been there yet, but I understand what they're going through because I've been there. So it's just like when I'll talk to girls here, you know, like Katie Stats, she's going to kill me for this too. Like, she's 10 years younger than me. She'll come to me with like dating issues and boy problems, and like part of me is like, I just want to shake you because I'm like, these are not the guys you should be dating, but I know at her age those were the exact
Those are the
same guys
guys
I was dating. So just giving the grace of being like, they might not understand because I don't understand. I changed so much from like 22 to 25 to 30. Like, what's my life going to be like at 35? So just understanding that I might not understand why somebody's upset, but that they're upset, and at some point I was probably upset about that too. You know?
And what do you got?
For which one?
Any.
Which one?
I've completely
There's
lost
so
track
many.
of this episode.
We're just talking at this point.
So I get such a kick out of talking to girls in their 20s. I really do, because I always attribute it to like compare it to moving, because when I was in my 20s, I think that like Mike and I just moved in like in the middle of COVID. Why anybody would do that, I don't know. We also downsized and got another dog, so I don't know why we would do that. But yeah, exactly, right. I laugh because this is legitimately, I think, my 24th move. And from when I first, because my dad and I moved constantly. We just kind of apartment topped for like the entire 80s. But when back then, I would just have a bag. Like, I would literally go and just take all the stuff, the toiletries off. I would take everything out of my drawer, and I'd have 3 bags, like 2 duffel bags and a makeup kit. Now I'm like, it's a fucking house. Like, oh my God, I got you kind of just, so when I see them, like when you were saying, the girls in their 20s who have all these problems, it's like the weight of the world versus what we have now. And we have so many different things between our parents and relationships. And it was so much easier back then because I didn't have that many tangibles. The only thing that I had in my 20s was me. If I had that much time to focus on myself now, I think I would be a basket case. So I'm kind of glad that I did it in my 20s, you know, because now I'm so happy to be distracted with this and with Twisted History and with kids.
Other people's problems.
With other people's problems, you know, like you guys are focusing on yourselves. And that's hard to do.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It is a good point.
It's hard. Thank you. It's very hard to do that. So, you know, I don't know if I would trade with them. Like,
I agree. I
don't-
wouldn't go back to my 20s.
Not in a heartbeat at all.
I mean, I was on fire, but I would not go back.
Yeah, I'm 32 and I wouldn't go back. I mean, they're not that long ago,
No,
and
you
I
guys
wouldn't go back.
deserve a lot of credit because it is really not easy to navigate yourself. That's
right.
why we fill up our 30s and 40s with other people's problems.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and like just flat out, if you're progressing in your career, you're making more money. So things that are like financially strapped when you're in your early 20s, you don't have those same problems. So I can afford nicer things. Now I can't afford the best things in the world, but I don't have the problems of thinking like, am I going to eat Taco Bell for like the 4th
ramen.
time this week? Am I going to eat ramen? Like, so that to me is a huge thing. And that's obviously for people who are progressing in their career. And that's not always the case, but things do get easier in some ways and get harder in others. So it's just, and that's never going to stop. I mean, in our 80s, we're going to be complaining about something.
Completely.
But not the same things we're
What do you
complaining
think?
about
Would
in
you
40s.
guys change? Do you love being in your 20s?
I think it's a good ass time.
Oh, I had a
I
great
think
time too.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of like going with the flow. Like I'm having a good time. I'm
So
just
you
like,
have
I'm
to
chilling.
though. Like
Like,
I've
what you should
loved
do.
I don't
every.
give a shit. You know, I'm just hanging.
I think you gotta love
I love where I'm
whatever
at.
you are,
100%.
wherever you are, because there's great things that will
Yes.
come at all stages.
I think the good thing that has been able to propel me towards that mindset though is that like I don't give a shit about what anybody thinks of me. I don't give a shit about like nothing
Good for you.
besides like a job and like the relationships in my life. Everything else, don't give a fuck. So like that has been super important in me finding my happiness in my 20s, where I think that that's where some people struggle, is that they're so focused on themselves.
How did
So
you
hard on
learn that?
themselves.
Like, who gave you that lesson?
My mom is the baddest bitch to walk the planet. She is really
Listener of this podcast, I will have you know.
Shout out, Mom.
Shout out mom. She is just like a Wonder Woman. She reminds me a lot of you, honestly. She's like
nice.
she's like
She
you're
tell you
my
not, her biggest piece of advice to you is not to take the first bit of food.
no.
You're never gonna live that one down, Jourdyn.
That's really funny.
I
though.
know
about our
important.
I do agree with that. But sorry, Frankie.
And
No,
don't
you're
have a
fine.
drink until your boss gets one too. Yes.
I think honestly, I haven't given a shit. Like even in high school, like I hung out with like the popular girls, but I didn't give a fuck. Like I was just like going, I was just a little jellyfish in the ocean, just floating around. I think that honestly, my mom taught me that like back in middle school. Like as soon as I could understand myself, she was just like, you have to not care what other people think of you. I'd walk up to her and I'd be like, I don't know if this looks good on me. I don't know if I really like this. And she'd be like, why are you asking me? Like, why do you care about my opinion? And so it's just like, like anybody in my life could be like, you look like shit. And I'd be like, all right, happy Tuesday. Yeah. Like, cool, thanks, dude. So it's just, that has been so deeply rooted in my mentality that like, that has been totally what's propelled me through my 20s to just be like, go with the flow and just do what you want to do and enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's great advice. Jourdyn, any other tips from the Kelly Martin jar?
No more tips from the Kelly Martin jar. I'd just like to reiterate to take life one day at a time. Because Frankie is so confident and she truly does not care what people think. I am the exact opposite, where I still internalize all of that and overanalyze all of it. And so just day by day, I work on shedding that. So I'd encourage the young girls to do that too, day by day.
Yeah. As my therapist says, take it day by day, but also zoom out and realize that if that problem is so big in your moment right now, like how many of those big moments have you had where you thought it would crumble you, and then you zoom out and you're like, oh, I cared about that for a month, or maybe you cared about it for years, whatever it is, but there's always another side of it, and that's going to continue.
Isn't there like the if it doesn't matter in 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years, like think of things in that. Like, is this a problem that you're going to have in 5 days? Okay, like it's only 5 days. This is a problem you're going to have in 5 weeks and so on. And that's like a good little snippet. I feel
I think those problems get more and more complicated as you get older, which is why in your 20s, it's like, you know, you're going to have real life problems, but you know, just giving yourself grace to get through them and understanding that like you're human. You're going to fuck up. We're all going to fuck up. People are going to fuck up to you, and just keep it moving.
All right, last question is, what is the worst piece of advice you've been given?
Oh, I have a really bad one from like the first, like my dad got me a job when I was like a sophomore in high school, and this person, his like advice was always like, keep your head up, keep your head down, do what you're told, and like don't make waves. And at that time I was like, okay, like that's what I'm gonna do all throughout high school. And like that's such a bad piece of advice.
Fuck that. That's
like,
terrible
keep your head
advice.
down and don't let anyone know you exist, pretty much. Like that's a bad piece of advice.
Yes, it is.
I would agree with that.
Especially at a company like this.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like from a career standpoint, I think it's that like every woman, even if they're nice to you, is just trying to get a one over on you. You know, that like it's always women against women.
That's awful.
Yeah, and I think that like growing up in
People say
sports
this to you?
I mean, in like when I was at ESPN,
Yep,
and
at
I'm not going to like
sports.
throw him under the bus or anything, but my boss would always compare me directly to that person, and another woman, and say, well, do you think that she did better than you, or do you think she did worse than you? Because you guys are competing for the same job. And so that inherently makes you think you're always in competition and you're pitted against each other. And so that, whether it's said or not, it's like, oh, every woman who does what I do isn't actually being nice to me. They're just being nice to me because they're trying to progress their career, which I figured out very quickly wasn't true. But I think that that doesn't just happen in sports. That happens just in general. And men don't have that. Like there's not men that, but I think from a career standpoint, it's just like, you don't need to be competing with every single person that just happens to have a vagina just because you do too.
Right. It's very hard. I've struggled with that here. Like I've been trying to build chicks here for 5 years now. And there's something in women, I think, that where, and I understand where it comes from, is that the pie is only so big. And we've got to share, there can only be so many pieces of the pie. Whereas men there hasn't been scarcity.
Right.
So I can get men here to collaborate in an infinitely easier way than I can get women.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, you just said that much better than what I was trying
no.
to say. But that's what it is. I mean, that's the advice
You
that
have
I
to
feel
fight
like people
for scarcity, and that,
right.
like, I
and if
hate
it's a
that.
male boss in a situation where you don't have the free
If it's your
flowing
authority,
conversation,
it's saying,
like
there's only one piece of pie.
right,
Like, which
exactly.
one of you is going to get?
And at Barstool, we don't have that. It's still still inherently in us. But in Barstool, we do have so much more freedom.
Yep. Jourdyn, do you have a worst piece of advice? Is that in your notes? Your amazing ability to transfer notes from one iOS product to another?
I'm so skilled. It's similar to what you guys said. I think you're taught that you need to look out for yourself and that nobody has your back, but it's totally okay to be a team player. Like we've been doing this podcast for almost a year now, and I would not be here if I wasn't a team player with so many people making it happen every day. And it's great to advocate for yourself, but it's even better when you can advocate for other people, because if they're advocating for you, then you know you're doing something right.
I actually love that. I think that I always have this funny story with Babs where when Babs, so Kelly Babstock, my like hockey younger sister in life, when something's wrong with Kelly, Kelly will reach out to me. I'll talk to her, and I'm always trying to like boss through her problem. Like I'm like CEOing the fuck out of the problem. Like, all right, what's the deal? We should do this, then we're going to do this. And then inevitably, probably 20% of the way through the conversation, Kelly will be like, can you just have Jourdyn call me? And I actually loved that, because what it made me realize is really what Kelly needed was she needs a sympathetic ear. She needs someone to hear her and be kind, and she doesn't need someone to solve her problem, which is, I'm always like, let's solve the problem, let's move. She needed someone to have empathy for how she was feeling. And I actually love that in our token world, is that, you know, I always say that Jourdyn is my voice, because and you want someone who's highly sensitive to have your voice. And I think that that's just a really nice thing. So you can write that in your Erika file.
Speaking of being your voice, we have to wrap it up.
Okay, fine.
Danielle,
I just want to tell you real quick. You had asked about the worst advice. When I was given a job description of what I was going to be doing, the last thing that this first boss said to me was, so basically your job is to make everybody else look better. And that was something that stuck with me for a long time. And I can picture him saying it.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah.
My worst piece of advice is that you should be happy with what you have. That you should, even if you're not happy, you should be happy with what you have, and that stepping outside of that or beyond that is foolish and or risky. And I think that's just a horrible way to live.
Yeah.
So
like if you're not happy, you're just supposed to pretend like it.
you're supposed to be just settle.
sit back and look pretty.
Settle. Yeah.
Fake
Okay.
it.
That's terrible.
Fake it.
Fake
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
You guys, thank you so
Thank
much. That was
you.
awesome. That was so inspiring. Shout out Norma Kamali, just bringing out the sensitive side
Shout out
of this
getting
podcast.
engaged in your 70s.
I know.
Good
Oh,
for
she's
her.
I she is such a love.